Good morning. Thank you for joining us for our special calls meeting for today, March the 14th. We are behind schedule, but we'll make up for the time, hopefully. We're going to start with opening prayer to be led by Councilman Lashley, and opening prayer to be led by Councilman Lawrenson, and the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Councilman Mack. If you will all please stand, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. God, we thank you so much that we can come together and do the business of the city, Lord, in such a harmonious way, God. I thank you for all those that are here today. I thank you for my fellow councilmen and for our mayor and all the staff and all of our employees. Lord, I pray that you'll continue to bless them and use them, Lord. I thank you for all the opportunities you give us to do what's best for our city, and I pray that's what we do today. In Jesus' name, amen.
You may be seated. Thank you, Councilman Lawrenson. Thank you, Councilman Mack. I officially call today's meeting to order. All right, I now request a motion to adopt the agenda as written.
And I'll second.
Motion by Councilman Curtis, seconded by Councilman Lawrenson. All in favor, please state aye and raise your hand. Aye. Motion carries. All right, number one, any public formal comments about the agenda items? Having seen none, I will move on to number two. Item number two is a discussion regarding the SPLOST 18 and ARPA allocations that'll take place between council and I. So we will now begin this discussion. I will start first by telling you, you all should have a document in front of you that looks something like this. It may be green, it may be thinner, and also, did I leave my other one? The other one looks like this, without writing on it. Okay, good. So I had to go figure out these numbers so that I didn't sound crazy. Trying to explain it to you all, so it took a little bit of time, but we got it together with the help of Mr. Dotson, Ms. Felicia, and Holly Groves. So for the ARPA Rescue Plan funds, we had a total award amount of $15,026,496. So just say $15 million was awarded to the city of Warner Robins for ARPA funds in 2021. And as of today, we have $7.6 million that has not yet been allocated. So that's $7,681,007 that have yet to be allocated. We need to allocate the ARPA funds 100% this year based on federal regulation. So what we're doing today is making sure that we at least put a good dent in the $7.6 million so we can begin utilizing some funds, allocate it, utilize the funds, and show proof to the federal government how we're using them so that we will be in compliance with the ARPA rules. The second part of the documents you're looking at has SPLOST 18. SPLOST 18 was originally budgeted to bring in $37.3 million to the city of Warner Robins, and that's just on our city's individual share of the SPLOST funds. For those who are unaware what SPLOST means, it is a special local option sales tax that comes through anything bought in our city. It is used for capital improvement projects, and originally when the SPLOST 18 was figured up by the county and for the public to vote on in the election at that time, $37.3 million was what was estimated. But that SPLOST account does not close out until September of this year. So we are still collecting funds every month based on the penny tax in our city, okay? And we have, to this day, we have brought in more than what was originally thought the revenues would bring us for this term, which went from 2018 to September of this year, 2024. So we're still actively collecting. So as of now, we are 16.6 million over the amount we originally budgeted, which is music to my ears and council's ears. That means we have more money to spend. There was a decision made, I think it was 22 and 22, to add some more funds to areas that the cost has gone up from when the estimates finally went in. And council made that action. It was a public meeting. We had all the information there for people to learn about. I think that was in 2022. So we had a revised estimate. So now, what we have right now in our accounts that's coming through as of today, we have 2.6 million that we have not yet allocated in our accounts. And that number is going to grow every single month until we get to September of this year. Then October hits, SPLOST 24 starts. So the clock starts over, and we're still getting funds in every month with all the penny tax, which is normal. So I just want to really communicate that SPLOST 18 has been good to us. The penny sales tax has been great to us, and we have more work to do. Even though we only originally thought we'd have 37.3 million, we now have we'll now probably get more than 55 million out of the SPLOST 18 funds. So, and I've given you the summary of the two view of the amount of money that we have to allocate currently and before us. We have over 9 million between the SPLOST 18 and the ARPA funds that we are able to allocate today. So what we need to do now is discuss how we want to allocate those things. I had another document, which I can't put my finger on, that showed the amounts that we've discussed over different meetings and how to fund some of these projects, which I'm going to call out by name. I can't seem to locate it, and they're not showing on this document. So I'll say we're starting over from scratch to determine how to allocate these things.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Holmes.
before you get too far, let me go back and ask you. You said we had 7.6 million not allocated, and just a moment ago you said now we're 2.6 million not allocated.
Yes, sir.
So that means we've spent or we've allocated monies elsewhere that you're going to cover.
Yes, sir. So what I did was I combined the amount for allocation that's on the ARPA form, which is that 7.6, and the SPLOST 18 form, which is that 2.6. So then I just put it together, over 9 million that we can allocate today between the two funds. All right, so now the discussion. And I've done a summary, now we're going to do the discussion. We had our retreat, and we've had a couple emails gone out between council and I about some projects we wanted to fund through ARPA. And I'm going to say them out loud. Councilman, if you follow along on your blue sheet, if you follow along on your sheet, the long table, yours doesn't look like mine, but it's green. If you follow along with me, then you can mark or highlight the areas that we need to allocate according to things we discussed in retreat. So on the ARPA one, we have A, where it says technology improvements. We're going to mark the ERP system cloud-based programs. which is the last line under A. And if you could help your neighbor, I know it's a little bit confusing to follow. All right, next you'll see B for customer service improvements. These were the new initiatives that were discussed in that first budget I worked on in 2022. You see website improvements has funds that we've already allocated, but the branding and the customer service, interactive customer service software has not yet been allocated. So you can mark the branding implementation and the interactive customer software underneath B.
What do you mean, mark?
I just want you to highlight it or underline it, because these are the things that we're going to be working to allocate today. Yes, sir. And then under C, city programs, you'll see shelter for the unhoused, youth development, technology, recruitment and retention, and sanitation services support. Okay, so you can highlight for allocation, shelter for the unhoused, everything but the last line. The sanitation services support, we don't need to allocate anything new there because we've already made that correction. So shelter for the unhoused, youth development, technology, and recruitment and retention. And then the last thing that we can highlight today, you're going to go to that next green row on your sheet, and you're going to see A, community grants. And for A, community grants, you see, I would just highlight that whole thing. Just highlight A. You don't even have to highlight what's underneath it because we've never allocated yet. So for that community grants, the community core grants, you can highlight A. So that makes 7 categories that we can discuss today as far as how to allocate funds. And we have $7.6 million to discuss for allocation of the fields we've just highlighted. Is everybody following me on that? Okay, good. Okay, perfect. All right, so now you guys get to chime in. We had estimated numbers we've already talked about for all these fields, but I don't have the data in front of me, and I couldn't locate it in printout. I didn't have time to go through my email and print it again. So we're starting fresh. So this is a discussion back and forth, you all, at this point. For ERP systems, going off of memory, I know that one was going to be kind of high. Okay. Hold on one moment. So I'll just explain a little bit of the categories. And ERP system, the ERP system means that we're trying to do the cloud-based. Right now we're on the AS400, and it is ancient. It needs to be replaced. We've talked about this many times, and we had to get some other technology upgrades first before we could get to the step of allocating funds for our ERP. So we can actually go out and purchase the programs and be cloud-based. We'll still back up all of our data hard, but we cannot continue to rely on technology that is a little bit, may not be operating in the way that we'd like it to operate. So ERP system, cloud-based, the first thing you have highlighted, that's what that is.
Mayor? Mayor?
Yes.
So those things that we had to have in place prior to implementing this ERP program or system, has that fully been accomplished? Is that fully supportable prior to implementing this?
Yes, everything's already accomplished or the ball's rolling. So now we can start having the meetings with the different ERP systems so we can go ahead and get the data, bring it back to council so you can see the companies that we're looking at.
Mayor, are there any additional funds needed in those other three areas? Equipment, communications, professional software, do we have everything we need there?
Let's see.
In other words, have we allocated the right amount in that budget to take care of those three areas? Whether they've already been done or not, is that enough? Do we need to put more money there as well?
It's a little bit hard for me to read, like when it says professional software and support, additional allocation. I can't tell you if that's the amount that we've obligated or we've not obligated it.
Mayor, it looks like to me that it's 1.2 that we've spent, and then the outstanding obligations is 33,000 that we're obligated in that, and then it gives that total 4.4 altogether, so
And
that's the
then-
way I read it.
But then the 3.1 for additional allocation, I don't know if that's already subtracted from the ARPA, meaning we have allocated it or at least earmarked it. I can't answer that part.
It doesn't look like it's been subtracted, because if you look at the.
It's
well,
not
no, yeah.
subtracted, but I was trying,
Yeah,
did
it-
we already
it
make
has
an
been.
action to determine the 3.1?
Yeah, it has been. It looks like it has been.
Well, it has been, because if you look down at the bottom of the line with all of the programs there, it says $5.3 million. So it looks like the budget that we're going off is that proposed budget to get that number that we ended up with.
Thank you.
Yeah, below the line, those are the sums of all the allocations. And the 5.3, that's just a proposed budget.
So when we highlighted those fields, I was trying to summarize this as much as possible because I don't know the answers to some of this stuff on the page. I just know for sure we have 7.6 million to allocate, and the fields that we've highlighted, we can allocate. We don't have to allocate the whole 7.6 to err on the side of caution, but we can at least allocate some of that. So if we do need additional funds for the computer equipment, communications, professional software, and support, we'll have some cushion to go back and allocate. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Do you have a ballpark on the ERP system?
Yes,
How much is that?
very high, like $1 million.
Well, that's fine, yeah. Well, we've got to have it.
Yeah, I'd say like $1 million. For ERP system, I'm hearing it's going to be expensive, so
Ma'am,
looks,
I'm sorry.
yeah. So I would, if you ask me, and I believe my paperwork before that I can't find, it was $1 million for the ERP system. For us to allocate for ERP to at least get us started.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
technology is going to change daily. We can put it in today and it's going to be outdated tomorrow. We do need to put some money in there, and we don't need to skimp if we can do that to the fellow councilman.
Are you referring to the computer equipment? Yes. Okay. I know we have money that's in our for computer equipment that hasn't yet been spent. And I don't, is there someone from finance here that can answer the questions that I'm struggling through?
Councilman, if I may add, in item C, below there, it has a area for technology because the one that you're looking at already has money allocated. So if I guess what I'm trying to say is, based on what you've gathered, Mayor, what what's the priority for each one of these areas highlighted that has the dire need, so we can know where we need to allocate what to and where based on the studies that you've received?
So we need more money for the ERP cloud-based programs because we've not funded anything for that yet. I would say professional software and support, but it already has a figure listed under additional allocation, and I'm not following the number.
So the
Yes, I'm going to ask the city administrator, he might be able to shed some light for us. Okay, yes.
That 3,152,000, we're under contract with VC3 through 26, and that would be the amount that we would have to pay them through 26. Does
So
that
that-
help you?
Yes, sir, so that money, that money has already been taken out of the 10 million.
Yes.
Okay, that's what it is. Thank you. So it's basically allocated, but we've not been billed on it yet. So that's what my confusion was, at least. So that means for professional software and support, we have 3.1 million that's yet to be spent there. So what I'm going to do is go back to the areas that we've highlighted. That's something I can speak intelligently about. And let's just see if we could go through that. I remember ERP system, per everyone we've spoken to, has said it's going to be pretty high. So my recommendation is at least 1 million for ERP system. For the customer service improvements, there are 2 things highlighted there: branding, implementation, and interactive customer software. I would recommend an amount that's probably closer to 250,000. These are all things for us to talk about. What I'm doing is getting us numbers to at least get us started, okay? So these aren't numbers I'm saying, let's do this for sure. But if you guys can kind of write down some of the things I'm saying, because it'll help guide us through this process. And then for C, city programs.
In that area, ma'am, I think youth development is important. We've all talked about that as well in different programs throughout the city for our youth.
I agree. So city programs, these are all new initiatives that the city could do based on needs that we have identified. We talked about some of these in retreat, but we've never allocated towards them. So these are actual initiatives we can start. And of course, the community grants is where we would have different organizations put in a proposal to receive funding for a program they're doing to help in the community. Just making sure we're clear on the difference between the city programs and the community grants. For community grants, I'm skipping down because I'm going to the easy numbers first. For community grants, I know we discussed potentially 1 million going for community grants. But I wouldn't go as far as to allocate how much we want to divide that up based on the categories that appear below it, because we don't know what kind of bids we're going to get yet. We might get one for, senior citizens for, 100,000, and I don't want to make it that we put a lot of money into that bucket when we only have a request by one bidder. Does it make sense? I'd rather come up with a big number and then let the bids and our awards determine how we allocate for those 4 categories.
Because if I'm not mistaken, that money has to be spent by a certain time, correct?
That's correct.
So we're just going to lump the 4 together then under community grants and just kind of put a dollar amount with it and then let it separate itself out.
Yes, sir.
How about 1.5 million in that section for
Okay.
those 4 areas?
All right, so we'll put down 1 million, then you put down 1.5, because again, we got to calculate and see what our overall number is, so we're just talking through.
Mayor,
1 million to 1.5, yes, sir.
You know, as I sit here and look at this here, and as we're talking about budgeting and planning our budget, and this community grants, for example, it would help if we talked about what are we going to do for each of these areas. It would help us reach a closer figure or a better figure. You know, just to say food insecurity, what are we talking about? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Senior citizens, what are we talking about? Are we talking about a building? Are we talking about program, the money to help some kind of program or something? Housing. Are we talking about building houses, buying houses? You see where I'm going
Yes,
with that? Yeah?
yes, sir, I absolutely follow you. So with the community grants, I know there was an effort started before I got here, where the previous city administrator was accepting proposals from people to provide different services through their organization that ARPA funds would go towards. For example, if we had an organization who does Meals on Wheels, for example, they may have submitted a proposal to say we have the Meals on Wheels program, and this is what we're going to do in our program. This is how much money we're asking for in the grant. So what we would do is just the same thing you all did before I was here, make an announcement, we have community grants. These are the 4 categories where we're accepting grants from the community to tell us your organization, what you're doing, what you want to do, how much you're asking for, and then through a very organized process, it's determined who is actually awarded the grant funds.
Mayor.
Does that make sense, Councilman?
Mayor, if I may add or ask, I thought in order to those proposals, those businesses had to have been affected by COVID or the pandemic, for that matter. I thought that was part of the criteria to receive those grants, not just a free-for-all for anybody to apply, but those businesses that showed proof that they were impacted by the effects of the pandemic. Is that proper?
Okay, so for the ARPA funds, what qualifies for us to give money to in the community would be in response to public health, negative economic impacts, to include programming aimed at different things like assisting populations most impacted, low-income individuals, our youth, violence. So to break it down a little bit easier, when we're talking about how to fund community organizations through a grant that the city would provide, they would need to be organizations whose mission aligns with what the government has said are issues that unearthed because of COVID. So we know there is inflation, housing prices are higher, so that is a market that was negatively impacted based on COVID. We know there are more people homeless because of it, so that's an area that was impacted. They'll say that, you know, a lot of people were facing unemployment, so crime could have, so they have a list of things that may have been impacted based on COVID. So it's not so much that I have an organization, for example, I have an organization and we give tutoring to children after school. And they may say, I'm going to submit an application to get a grant because I want to fund my tutoring program. That's probably not on the list because that's not something the government has defined as something that may have impacted negatively because of COVID. Does that make sense? Or if someone has a daycare center, that's not going to be on the list. But if they have a program, if the government says, and there's a list of recommendations, but they're saying, well, there has been a rise in crime which occurred during COVID, which there's proof that there is, then you can fund that.
Well, with the daycare center, I respectfully disagree because during the pandemic, kids were not allowed to go, and people that were operators of their daycare centers couldn't pay their mortgage because they had no revenue coming in because their kids weren't coming during that time. I thought that was in the criteria as well.
So you're saying the revenue that they lost during COVID, that could be something that we can look at too. But since we're doing it this year, it's kind of why I left that off because it was awarded in 2021 and it's now 2024. So we can go back and pull. It's based on us what criteria. what categories we want to fund. I mean, we decide that as long as it's within the ARPA rules. So if we make it, considering what you've said, Councilman, if we just say for community grants, for organizations to submit packages, to say we have this service, we can look on ARPA to make sure it's a qualified purpose, and then we can consider the applications to see who we're going to give funds to for the program they have in detail defined. So then we know, are you building houses? Are you assisting with rent? What are you doing for food insecurity? So all the questions that Councilman Holmes asked, that's what the organizations have to tell us. And then we decide if it's something that we want to fund or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Mayor, I'm glad you said that and gave me a chance to say what's sitting here on my mind. I don't mean to be insensitive toward this here, but what I do want to say to you publicly is I don't want you spending a lot of time on what was supposed to have been done, and now you're finding out it has not been done. Let's forward you here. Let's start today on what we're going to do. Because you know, and I know, and a lot of the public know already, a lot of things that were supposed to have been done was kicked to the curb. And we didn't know that. So let's not take, I don't want you putting that on your shoulders. They're broad enough, but I want that on your shoulder. And I'm not going to put it on mine.
Yep, good point, Councilman.
Can I ask a question? If we allocate funds to a specific theme, can we actually move those funds later if it's not being used? Or even if we allocate funds to say, what is that, food insecurity, and that money is not being used, can we reallocate that fund somewhere else?
You can answer.
I think this is to the mayor's point about putting it in the general bucket of a broader heading of community grants, and if you put however much in there, that way you'd have some flexibility, I think as Mayor Patrick pointed out, to put it to one of the other subcategories of food insecurity or senior citizens if you're seeing that it's not being requested.
Okay, that's great, exactly, that's what I want to hear.
Okay.
So, but also, what if we decide that, hey, look, so this organization come in, they say, well, we want $300,000. And because we got a certain amount of time that we got to spend this. And when we realize, hey, they're not going to actually spend this $300,000, we're going to lose it. Can we take that money back and put it somewhere else?
I think our grant coordinator is here, but I think our grant paperwork would include that the funding would be contingent upon a specific purpose and use within a specified timeline. And if that did not occur, there would probably be some type of clawback provision.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is much tougher than I anticipated, but we still have to do it. It's not easy, but it's very impactful, and we just have to do it. So right now, we've not determined, and I wish this is more in a, that's why I wish I had my papers, but I don't. Let me see if I
So Mayor, I want
talked
to
about
ask
this
a
before,
question.
and I just,
I'd like to ask a question on top of that. When we talk about spending the dollar, does it mean that we have to allocate that dollar, or it has to be gone by a certain July 1st, 2026, that the dollar has to be spent? Or for us, is allocating that money to these organizations a spending of the dollar?
it's both. So we have to allocate by a certain time, meaning we're defining how we're going to use it, and then there's a certain amount of time we have to show that it's been used, and that comes in 2026, from my recollection. So we need stuff that's going to be quickly used, and not things that's going to take, for example, building a building. For ARPA, we don't have time for that. We got to do quick projects.
So I think we're all in agreement on 1 million for community grants, right? So we could just go ahead and write that 1 million down for community grants.
And SPLOST is much easier than this one, but we're going to go ahead and and finish going through ARPA. Um, Okay, so let's just put some numbers on this paper so we can move on. At least we have 1 million for ERP. At least we have 1 million for community grants. That leaves us 5 million left.
Mayor,
So-
I'm sorry.
Ma'am, this last sheet that we received here with these line items like this is what we discussed at the retreat. Some of these items that were discussed were things that we thought we needed within our city to include items that would improve quality of life. Where would they fit? Would that be all under community grants as well? This SPOS 20, oh, that's SPOS 24.
So the papers that are, the items that are on the small part, those are more SPLOST projects, capital improvement. So they could come out of our SPLOST overage, or they could come out of what we're spending on SPLOST 24. So I really wouldn't look at that much, because it'll just.
Only reason I asked is when you said you combined the number, that's what provoked me to ask that.
Oh, well, I just did a summary to tell, we can allocate 9 million today, but they still have to go in the right bucket for consideration.
Mayor, based on the figures, 1 million, 250,000, and another million, that's 2,250,000. And if we subtract that from the 7 million, is that the figure we're working with right now? Is 7 million what we're working with now? And if so, if we subtract that from it, then we're down to, hypothetically, we're down to $4 million, $4.5 million.
Yes.
I would propose that we put another $500,000 on the ERP.
I agree with that.
This is something we really, really need. And we'll have time, because once you get your bids in and everything, we'll have time. But I think everything we do is what the attorney stated, and the question was asked, it should be flexible so that we can move it where it needs to be before deadline date.
Do we have any type of estimate on how much the ERP is gonna be? Any? Just, no?
We've not we've not opened it up for bid yet. We needed to see how much we could do. Do we need to just do? It depends on how much we allocated. So we haven't opened up bids. We don't want to open up a bid and say we're getting ERP bids right now for all these different categories if our funding wouldn't support it. So we're finding out how much we have to spend first, and then we're accepting bids, and then we'll know, we're doing demos. We're doing demos after this, so then we can better determine how much these systems will cost us. But per our IT partner, 1 million is a good figure. 1.5 is an even better figure to get us started.
And
Mayor, I agree with Mr. Holmes. I think we ought to make that 1.5. I agree with that.
I was going to go and say 2.
Okay, along that line, Mayor, I'm of the opinion that if my checkbook says I have $1.5 million in it, and we start looking at programs, I don't care what the company says, $1.5 million is all it's in my checkbook. And I'm not going to spend 2 million.
Yes, sir. I'm very big on that concept right there. So I'm right here with you. Thank you. Okay, so we have 1.5 for ERP, 1 million for community grants, at least. It might go up, but let's just put it down for holding its space. And then we have the 250,000 for branding implementation.
Mayor, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
These categories that we have, A, B, C, I think we ought to do the same thing what we did for the community grants, lump them all into one. I think we ought to lump the city programs all into one and allocate money just on A, B, C, and D, and then allocate the money from there to the programs that we need to whatever branding is. And instead of coming up with just a generic figure, let's put a figure with each one of the categories, and then from that fund it on what's needed.
Got it. Yep, love it.
Totally.
So now we're funding four areas instead of 7. That makes sense. Thank you for your brilliance, because I don't do numbers, and I'm under a lot of pressure and stress right now because I can't tell you everything on this sheet and what it means. And the amounts we've talked about before, I don't have them before me. Yeah, I don't have the latest stuff before me.
So it would make it simpler if we
Let me
did that.
stop you, Mayor. You're doing good. Let me just say it like it is. You're doing good. We come in here to discuss things. I told you your shoulder ain't that wide where you can carry all the heavy weight that's laying on the ground. Don't pick it up and put it on your shoulder. I think Councilman Bill just hit a good point there. He certainly has my support on that. If we just take the allocate money to A, B, C, D, or whatever the case might be, and then break it up as it's needed where it needs to be. $7.5 million, or we put $3 million in A and $2 million in B and what have you. Then we can come back and divide it up once we get the bid prices.
So under city programs, can we put 3 million?
You can, and then you can add city programs to that. Even if you did 2 million to each one of them, you come up with 6, and then put the remainder of it into the city programs.
And one of this, so can we put 3 million for city programs for now?
I'm okay with that.
All right, one of the programs under the city programs, that technology is actually technology and youth development together. I mentioned to you all a program that came to us where we could have a community innovation lab from a very strong collaboration partner that you all be happy to know about. That program is really game-changing, so it allows for a room to have various stations, at least 12 stations, where children can come in and do hands-on STEM, hands-on robotics, drone, broadcast, production, video production, robotics. There's a whole list of things they can do, and it's completely free to the public. They'll also have summer camps. They'll also have camps during the school year. They'll have adult education when it comes to technology courses, and senior education when it comes to technology courses. There's lots of programs that comes with this technology thing that was pitched to us by a very strong collaboration partner, and they want to do it here in Warner Robins. So one of the programs that we could do, that Community Innovation Lab, would be funded out of this city programs budget.
I'm great with that, Mayor. I think that's good.
Okay, thanks. And then you guys are going to get the information. It's one of those things where you can't say the name until we can say the name, but I'll talk to you all outside of this. Okay. All right. So currently we have who's keeping my figures for me?
Mayor, this is if you put $2 million in A, $2 million in B, you put the $3 million in the city programs. That's 7 million, and then you got the rest left over for the community grants.
In the simplest forms, I divided the $7.6 million by the 4 areas that we talked about, well,
So I'm just trying to see how much we have left over, and maybe we can leave a little bit back and not allocate yet, so we can, no, we could just do it all now.
so city, on the bottom part, city programs, community grants.
5, 6.
What's your take on the city programs part at the very bottom?
What's my take on, say that again, please?
The bottom, the city programs?
He's talking about the first responders, bonus supplements,
Oh,
personal.
those are
protective
things that were
equipment.
already, those things were already allocated. Those were one-time things that you guys did already before I got here.
I was looking at program administration, that's what I'm saying. So if that's irrelevant, I just did simple math. We got 4 categories, and I divided that 7.6 million, each category was 1.9 million. I'm not saying we allocated, if we were to do it evenly, you know, then the sum would be 1.9 million and some change.
Okay, so now let's just put down the final numbers. I know we've said a lot of options. Have we settled out, what's the amount we're putting for technology improvements? I think I heard 2 million.
I
We
would
went
put
2?
2 million in there.
Okay, technology
So I
improvements.
suggested 2
Well, we
million.
said 1.5, are we raising another 500,000?
Yeah, when you said, well, I said, I think we should be 2 million because of the very point that you made in the very beginning about inflation.
I agree. Right now, we're based on the figures we not started with, but somewhere in the middle here.
Yes, sir.
We spent $4,750,000 out of the 7 million plus.
Yes, sir.
Every area doesn't carry the same weight. But I have to agree with Councilman Mack. We need to spend the money, and that's the easiest way to do it. Might not be the simplest way to do it, but it might not tilt the scales as we think they're going to tilt. We might have something way up in the air because of the weight way over here.
Thank you. All right, so for technology improvements, which includes ERP and the other 3, if necessary, the other 3 categories, like the computer equipment, communications equipment, et cetera, 2 million is where we're at now. For B, customer service improvements, the last number I remember us talking about was 250,000, but what was that new number?
I don't know if you'll need a full 2 million in there. You may only need 1 million.
Yeah, but
I don't know, I disagree. Customer service, that's our biggest asset.
That's our most interactive asset is our customer service. That's where the people touch the city is through customer service.
so at customer service improvements, we're talking about the website design, which we've already allocated for website improvements. The branding implementation, which is branding ourselves, branding the city. Interactive customer software could be in the form of an app where they can send in their complaints. If they don't, if the trash isn't taken out, they can take a picture. We'll know exactly their location. They immediately send it in. Now we have their complaint and we have the proof. So those are examples of the customer service improvements that we discussed in that 2022 year. In different ways we can improve the customer service experience.
And to support what you're saying, I don't know the number, but if I may ask, approximately how many phone calls does the city get per day through customer service? And if we were to reduce that by those things that you mentioned, like those apps and alternate ways to report issues, it can increase our bandwidth for our employees to do something else other than just sit by the phone answering the phone, right?
That's right.
If we know that the interactive software there, the app is going to cost 250,000, you know, how much more money are we going to spend on just branding? That's why I was thinking 2 million might be a little hefty there, unless there's some other things in those 2 categories that we know of already. That's
Yeah.
why. I
So we have
suggested maybe
pricing,
going
Okay.
1 million.
we have
Mayor.
pricing for everything in that category.
Right now, based on the conversation, we've put 3 million in A, 2 million in B, is up from 250,000, make 2 million there. And, I'm sorry, 2 million in, 3 million, 2 million, so that should be, and then 1,250,000. 3 million, 2 million, 1,250,000. That's $6,250,000.
I'm confused. Where'd you say the 3 million was?
City programs.
There was 2 in A, Mr. Holmes.
2 million in A.
2 million in A to start. $2 million in A. I stand corrected. 2 million in A, 250,000 in B, 3 million in C. We came back and we said 2 million in A, 1,250,000 in B, and 3 million in C. And that comes to a total of $6,250,000.
And we can put the remainder
If we take that six.
Remember
just a
community
moment.
grants.
Community.
Remember
grant.
community grants. We said
Community grant.
1.5.
Okay, I said one. I got 1.25.
You said the range was 1 to 1.5?
Yeah, but I'm right now, I'm not talking about range, I'm talking about, we dealing with math. This math is exact.
The high number was
Math is
1.5.
exact.
The high number she said was 1.5 in that area. Well, go ahead.
Okay, let me do this here, then you'll kick it around. But math is exact.
Amen.
Let me back up again. A.
All right, so,
A. Come on, Mayor. A.
all right, so just as a
2
recap,
million, 2 million.
A is 2 million.
B.
Let's just
one-
put that up to 500,000.
Pardon me?
For B, put it up to 2, let's just put B up to 500,000.
Instead of 1,250,000?
Yeah,
Because
because they're-
somebody threw out that figure.
That's too high, because we have the numbers for all those things, and no, it's not that high. So if we could do 500,
Now you
That
got
should
my
work.
math, I got to do my math all over again.
sorry to mess you up, Councilman.
2 million for A, 500, that's 250 million. 3, that's 5.5, and then I say put the rest in the A. Put it in this community grants, that way we can really affect the community by helping out people in our community with housing projects, rent, food, senior citizens, there's all kind of stuff we could do, and that just makes it simple.
Those grants go a long way, and
Yeah,
you're
but have
touching
we
so many different areas.
gotten that many requests for support in housing? And are we going to become a fictitious landlord, a fictitious bank? I don't want to put us in a position that the city all of a sudden become that place to go. You know, the churches offer some of these things, these same services. And you see some of the same people coming to church every other Sunday saying they need. I look at that. I look out of both eyes, not one eye. And I wonder what are they doing in between the time they came with their hands out today and when they come back 2 weeks from now with their hands out. What have you done to close the gap? And if we make it that simple, we creating something that our kids going to have to carry, our grandkids going to have to carry.
I would make the recommendation, Mandy, when you get a second, could you write this down? I said, when you get a second, could you write this down?
So before you speak, Councilman, I just needed, it's a lot of numbers, so I'm just going to go over what I have recorded, so then we can move on to what you're saying, okay? So in summary, what we have right now for A, 2 million, B, 500,000, C, 3 million, and then that last one, A, for community grants, is at 1 million. If we kept those numbers, it's at 6.5 million that we have allocated out of these 7.6. So I understand that A, community grants number may be changing to a higher number, which is fine, but I needed to at least go through what we officially have on paper. Follow me? Okay, now Councilman Curtis.
So that's exactly what I was about to say. Let's go ahead and just allocate. My numbers were 2,500,000, 3 million, 1.5, and reallocate the remaining later. So, I mean, pretty much the exact same thing. So we're on the same page.
I think we're all on the same page, it's just the road we're going to get there.
I know, it wasn't supposed to be this way, but like I said, I can't, I don't have my stuff together, so it's all good. We're ironing it out. So we changed that community grant to 1.5 million right now, which puts us at 7 million. So that gives us 600,000, which we can hold off right now on allocating it. But I wonder if we could just make another area and just say other. Let's just put that for other, the $681,007 for other. Is it good? Godfather gives a good nod. Okay, thank you. So sorry about this process, you all. We worked hard on our numbers before, and I just don't have them. So, but I think we got the work done. Okay. And then for the ordinance, they're going to fill in what needs to be done. So when we finish discussions, we can vote on the numbers we've just come up with. All right. So now let's go to SPLOST, which is much easier. The money is lower, doesn't make it easier. It's just easier because we already know the categories. So if you pull up the other sheet, which has one table on it at the top of the page, you'll see for SPLOST 18, as of today, we have 2.6 million in overage today that's not been allocated. 2.6 million in overage that's not yet been allocated. Please note that every single month until we get to October of this year, we are getting more funds that we have to allocate. So our bucket for allocation continues to grow for SPLOST 18 because we far exceeded what our original budget was. That means we're going to be coming back more and more to talk about how to allocate these funds. So I venture to say, instead of us having to come back every couple months to allocate this bucket, and they'll tell me if I can't, but I don't want to go through this process like this anymore. So I'm thinking when we're allocating the 2.6, we can make it a higher number and say, let's allocate 4 million, for example. So we've allocated ahead. Can we do that? Finance, I need you to give me a nod if we can do that. For SPLOST 18. You can come here.
The 2.6 is what we're estimating that we should receive.
All the way to October.
Right. And those are estimates, so.
So just for clarification, all right, so original budget was 37.3 million, right? And we've already collected 16.6 million over that amount.
No, that's an estimate. The amended budget was the estimated budget. So we're really thinking that we're going to get 52 million, not 54. We're estimating that we're going to get around that 52 million, the yellow.
So let me ask you this. The first one was the original. The second one is what we thought and estimated again that we were going to be was 54 million, right? But the difference that we have brought in is 16 million, and now we're estimating at 52 million instead of 54, which is going to give us $22.6 million over, correct? That's simple.
Right, so what we're saying is there's only 2.6 that I would say is an estimated number that you can work with.
Why, we're estimating, so the money has already come in, correct?
No, it has not. Those are estimates. So,
So
Anticipated.
so how do we know that we've reached our, how do we know that we reached it if the money hadn't came in?
And that is correct. So that's a ballot question, and I'll explain it to the way that it was explained to me. Amended budget based on how much money the city was receiving monthly. Originally, the city believed it would receive monthly during that 5-year term is $37.3 million. Then we saw we're far exceeding those monthly balances. So they came up with an estimate, a true estimate of how much at the rate we're trending and the monthly amount we're receiving from our sales tax, we were trending at bringing in $54 million for that 5-year term. Is everybody following me on that one? So they did a new estimate based on what we were actually seeing come into the bank on a monthly basis for our SPLOST. So that took us to an estimate of bringing in $54 million, and we never allocated all of that. Okay, so instead of having, so then we did another one based on more current data that tells us how much we're bringing in every month. So we readjusted our expectation, lowered it. So now we're estimating for that 5-year term, we're going to bring in $52.1 million. So $2 million less than we originally thought we would at the second calculation. Does that make sense, Councilman?
Right, so we're looking at $8 million that we need to allocate.
No.
So let me ask this, can I ask a question, if it's okay? As of January 1, 2024, how much money have we brought in? Not an estimate, we have real numbers.
Yes, there are real numbers, and finance would have to tell that number because it's not on the document, how much we actually have realized in our SPLOST.
Mayor, the sheet that
Yes.
I'm looking at on the bottom, remaining could be allocated. Under the difference from what we've already allocated, we have a $5.342 million. And then, in addition to that, we have an amended projection that gives us another $2.6 million. That's why I'm saying that we're close to $8 million that we need to now allocate based on what this sheet says. Now, if it's wrong, that's another story. But if this is correct, we have about $8 million.
Well, we have finance here. Can you please speak to that last row where it says remaining could be reallocated? It has a figure of 5.3 million under difference and a figure of 2.6 million in revised estimated revenue.
right, so the original 54, that's the difference. And so that's why we reallocated it back to the 52, which lowered it down to, instead of 5.3 million, to 2.6.
Okay,
So they
I'd say you went
subtracted.
down. I got you. I see it now.
Okay. So they subtracted it. So right now, what we're estimating for reallocation is 2.6 million. And I'd venture on the side of caution, since this isn't a true estimate,
Right.
that we allocate less than 2.6. Because we don't know if we're going to
I got it.
reach the whole 52 million. We're hoping to exceed it, but we just don't know.
Right.
Okay, so that's very helpful. Thank you.
And
So,
then we've
to
collected the 44 million, I know you were asking.
say that again,
So
please.
we've collected 44.3 million,
As to date, we
Right.
collected 44.
yes.
44.3 million.
Right, which is over the original of 37 million.
Right.
So we have collected more than the original amount, but we have not reached the goal of 52 million yet.
Okay. All right, everybody understand that? Thank you for that. That was very helpful information.
And then on your ARPA, just so you understand a little better, there's two categories.
Please don't confuse us on ARPA. I got it. I already know what you're going to say.
Okay.
And we got it.
That's-
Make sure that the money that's coming out of the 10 million,
Right.
that we have all that up under there. Now, C, where it says city program, this is, you, and close your ears because it only confuse you. But I'll tell you after. So we got it. I'll talk to you after. Okay, good. Okay, so we're done with ARPA. Now we're back to, and thank you so much for that information. Now we're back to SPLOST 18. We have 2.6 we're estimating that needs to be allocated. I would say for us to allocate less than that.
So Mayor, I
Or we
got a-
can allocate it and just say, if we receive the 52.1 million, then this is how it is to be used. Instead of saying, for sure, this is how we're going to use the money. Does that make sense? Okay, so for that, I have some information to share with you when we're talking about the 2.6 million. We have some upgrades that we are trying to schedule for our parks that receive a lot of traffic. We don't have pavilions at those parks, and we really see fit to add some pavilions so that people can rent them for parties outdoors. Most people are trying to get into the buildings, and you can only do one party at a time. But putting the outdoor pavilions so parents aren't standing up the whole time their kids are playing is something that we have planned, and that's to the tune of about $60,000. Also, upgrading the bathrooms. I hear so many complaints about Ted Wright only having very little bathrooms. So, for example, we need to increase the amount of bathrooms we have at our parks that receive a lot of traffic. So those are two things I know that I would love to see us fund out of the SPLOST 18 budget. Additionally, I have it somewhere in these documents about recapturing the water for the splash pads. Recapturing the water for our splash pads, if you all didn't know, our water runs, it goes in the ground, and that's it. But you can recapture the water, which is better for the environment, better for us. We're not wasting good, nice, clean, cold water. And that is another expense that I'd love to see us fund out of the SPLOST 18.
What is the estimated cost on that?
Oh, we also have a boom lift, which is, I don't know what a boom lift is, but I think it's something with the equipment, transportation equipment for utilities, public works, for public works when it comes to cutting trees.
Like, you see tree.
Yes, our public works cuts trees. If it's on public property, but not private. Yes, sir. All right, so when it comes to, now I'm going to remind you, if you look on the table, you're going to see the categories which are approved through SPLOST. Through our SPLOST guidelines, we have roads, street, bridge, and sidewalks, public safety facilities and equipment, water and sewer system improvements, general government capital improvements, property acquisitions, demolition, and infrastructure improvement, and recreational facilities and equipment. So that's what we can allocate. So for this, I think we have to put the amounts we want in the categories according to regulations. So I would suggest for parks and recreation, for recreation facilities and equipment, we determine what number is going to go there. And that field appears right above where it says total. So the fourth row from the bottom of the table.
The only blank space in the numbers, correct?
That's a blank space because of another reason. So don't look at that. Look at the table at the very end where it says proposed allocation, where we have to fill in.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
put me on track. I was gonna start at the top and say put 500,000 more in sidewalks. That's a need. We keep saying we're putting off, or we have not started because we have not gotten the funds or don't have enough funds. That would be my proposal to the council, is that we put 500,000, add 500,000 to that. Recreation and facilities, another 500,000. That's $1 million of that 2 million right there.
And didn't we have some needs in the utility department? Some additional needs, like, for instance, sewer for Ted Wright Park.
I agree with you. I didn't want to be the one that put it up, spend all the money, because I can spend it all, we go home.
Right.
I can do that real quick, but I'm trying to give everybody else a chance.
Well, that's what I was
I've
asking.
spent $1 million.
Is there anybody
Could we ask
asking out of
Monty,
this?
could we ask Department Head Walters if there's some utility needs that we can fund today?
So when it comes to utilities, I think we're pretty well covered with the ARPA $12.1 million grant we have. We have splash money, we have other money, and we can take care of the parks. That's not a big issue. From what I've seen talking with the other directors, our biggest need is vehicles and equipment. So I think that includes police, fire, public works, and utilities. Right now, I probably need over $300,000 worth of vehicles. So I've got about, I think, $190,000 left in my splash fund. So speaking for some of them I've talked to today, I think vehicles are a really important thing. We're starting to bring in more employees, which means we need more vehicles.
That's a
We
great
have
point,
a lot
Monty.
of old vehicles with 200,000 and 300,000 miles. Dump trucks now cost $150,000 instead of $75,000 like they used to. So even when we did the splash, those numbers don't work nowadays because of inflation. But when it comes to infrastructure, we got it going on. We got plenty of money. The grant helps us. Our ARPA grant also has to be spent by 2026. So we're fast tracking every project we can with the bonds and that to get them going. So we're good on the parks. We'll help any way we can with funding. I think you can reallocate this however y'all would like. But keep in mind the vehicles are pretty important to each department. So.
Thank you, Monty. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Monty. That's a great point.
Ma'am,
Okay, so with that,
Ma'am.
right now, our total is for sidewalks, this is a proposal, $500,000 for sidewalks, $500,000 for recreation facilities and equipment, and this is what I recommend, general government capital improvements is right underneath water sewer. General government capital improvements, to put $1 million there, that covers a large number of things in different departments, and then make an other field and put in the rest to get to the 2.6 million.
ma'am, I know that I get a lot of conversation. I hear a lot of conversation and have a dialogue concerning stormwater, the problems that we're having throughout our city. I think we need to consider that area to help in that area, because a lot of parts of our city are flooded when we get heavy rains. If that's proper, if you find a need, Mr. Woodyard, is there a need in your department for any extra funds for stormwater?
All right, Mr. Woodyard, I already know your answer. You can come to the podium if you want, but let's make sure council remembers, I have to invite them to come to the podium. I just met with the two Craigs the other day about some stuff. So for our stormwater, we have fees that come in for all our stormwater, and then those monies are spent according to the budget. So when it comes to improving the stormwater, which is infrastructure improvements, funds can be used out of SPLOST 18, but we also have funds that's already allocated. So some of the things you're hearing, those funds are already allocated in 24 SPLOST. So those monies are already going to them. So for 18, we're just looking at the extra money we weren't expecting to get, in ways we can put that outside of normal business operation. Does that make sense? So they're getting funding for their stuff.
Yeah,
And
I
if-
would just wanted to propose it as a question, so
Okay.
thank you for clearing it up.
You're welcome, no problem.
And Mayor, I have one question too before we move on. Property acquisition, do we need to put any additional funds there? Or are we okay there?
I'm gonna, I know at one point we needed to, but did we just make an action on that? We did. Okay, we did just make an action to put in more money for that, but that's a good question. Thanks. All right, so again, what's proposed at the moment is 500,000 extra for sidewalks, 500,000 extra for recreation, 1 million for capital improvements, and then a field that says other for 605,000. I'm going to ask the city administrator to approach the podium because I need to know what he thinks about this allocations. He's worked very hard on coming up with ways to spend these extra SPLOSTs. And with all the confusion I'm in, I'd rather him tell me if I got everything down.
I think what you all have proposed so far is you're on the right track. We're behind in a lot of areas. I think this would certainly help to improve a lot of the facilities that we have. Does that answer your question, Mayor?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Some-
Okay, so what do you guys think about the proposals, adding in more for sidewalks, recreation, and capital improvements?
So I'll get clarity on the general government capital improvements. So that would cover all the departments needing vehicles, correct?
For the vehicles are already in the budget for the budget we're working on now, and also for SPLOST 24. So the vehicles are already money for vehicles is already allocated. Did I say that right, Mr. Dotson? Mm-hmm. So the vehicles they say they need, we have them. So if we were starting a new division, if we decided to collect our own trash, for example, those will be things that we've not already allocated for. That would be proper to say we're going to put extra money towards vehicles. But all the other vehicles, they're already going into the budget we're working on now from general fund and from SPLOST 24 on a schedule as far as how many vehicles they can get every year for SPLOST. Yeah, the boom lift is an additional thing that we need. Does that make sense? Yeah. So they have a whole formula on how we're doing as far as how we're paying for our vehicles. Okay. And I have a question for our city administrator. For that boom lift, does the funds for the boom lift need to go in another category, or is it fine coming out of the general government capital improvements? For this one.
That boom that Craig is requesting, it's already in the SPLOST 218. You already have money for that, don't you?
I guess you can approach, so you can answer Mr. Dotson.
The monies that we're discussing as far as equipment goes, like Monty was speaking to earlier, we do need funds as far as equipment goes. And for an example, we have a grappler. We have two grapplers. One grappler is in need of maintenance right now, and we're talking $100,000 just to repair a boom on the grappler itself. And that could be something that could be allocated over to code enforcement, because I know they had some questions about needing a grappler. So if that monies could be allocated to that one grappler, code enforcement can take that as far as cleaning up properties throughout the city and stuff. And I know that was some questions. But we have many excavators that are very well aged. That we're talking that were bought early 80s that need to be replaced and such. So when you're talking about equipment, we share with utilities. When they need an excavator, they can come over and pick up. We have trailers that are shared between departments that these need to be replaced, and this type of equipment needs to be replaced on. Now, we do have funds in the 2018 SPLOST, but that has been allocated. When we're talking about the boom truck, like the mayor was speaking about, we're looking at a towable boom now that when you're talking about a boom truck that runs about $90,000, now we're looking at a towable boom that runs about 40. So we're trying to save money and cut costs where we can, but we still need monies to cover like newer excavators and such. And those are always going to be used, so you need to really consider those type of funds being allocated if you can, because it is shared between multiple departments, code enforcement, utilities, stormwater. So you really need to consider those factors if you can also.
Thank you, Mr. Clifton.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Dotson, for the boom lift, do we need to allocate more for the boom lift inside of the categories, or will that be covered out of the general government capital improvements?
The boom lift is going to be taken care of out of 2018 SPLOST. Since I've lowered the cost and found something cheaper, I'm able to cover that in the 2018 SPLOST.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
For being a good steward of taxpayer dollars.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate it. Okay, so sounds like the proposal before us, if we kept it the same, it'll take care of the 2.6 million. And I do want to throw out there as another note, when it comes to any vehicles we need in the city, we try to always pay for those out of SPLOST 24 or SPLOST. When October comes, SPLOST 24 comes, and we already have a schedule of ordering new equipment for the departments under the SPLOST 24. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So any revisions to the proposed uses for the SPLOST 18 overage? From council. Okay, great. Hearing none. Hearing none, we're going to move on. I think she's passing out for people to do. And if I could find the agenda, I can talk about the banking. All right, so one other thing we need to discuss is going to be actually, let's go on ahead and do the motion. For number 3, we have a motion, we need to amend our agenda. No, we don't. Sorry, I'm all over the place, y'all, I'm sorry. I'm usually way more organized, and I'm just not, and it's throwing me off. I don't like not being organized. All right, so we've talked about the discussion of SPLOST 18 and ARPA allocations. The next thing on our agenda is number 3, which is a motion for the cover sheet, which you have before you. Before we get to that motion, I do want to talk about the purchasing cover sheet first. So I would request a motion to amend the agenda to allow for number 3, to allow for an item to be added before our current number 3 for a discussion of purchasing cover sheet.
Mayor, I make a motion to add an item before number 3 to discuss what's on the purchasing cover sheet.
I'll second that.
Motion by Councilman Lawrenson, seconded by Councilman Bibb. All in favor, please state aye and raise your hand. Okay, thank you. All right, so when it comes to purchasing cover sheet, the City of Warner Robins put out a bid, a request for a proposal for banking providers, those who were registered under our system, which is Ion Wave, per information given to me, received a notification, which is normal operations that we do, that there is a banking bid out for people to respond to if they so wish. From that, we received 4 banking companies responding to our request for proposal about our banking services. Okay. From the 4, there was a panel of individuals who went through review, analysis of the data, comparing each company against each other, comparing their pro forma based on the sample total amount of money we gave them, and from there, it was determined the top 2 companies. Okay, So from there came a round of clarifying questions to both companies. They each received the same questions according to what the rules would say, the same questions for them to address. So each of them had the same opportunity to give us the additional information. So all those steps were done. So now we've gotten to the point where we need to make a decision on who's going to receive the award for the banking RFP. Okay. It's been months since that's gone out. The RFP went out prior to Christmas. I don't know if it went out prior to Thanksgiving. I just can't recall. But it's been months, and we need to make a decision. So before that, I'm going to ask if I just need to have some feedback. I want you all to hear some feedback from, I'm putting him on the spot, by Mr. Dotson, because we didn't get a chance to talk about your thoughts on the banking partner. So if you could just come tell us your thoughts on the process so that you can help us in guiding if the company that we've notated is the best, or if we need to strike it and go with the other company, because we need to pick one of the companies today.
Having gone through the process on the banking RFP, my recommendation would be that you do one of two things. You either hold it until I can get some clarification on some items that are of concern to me. I know that the proposal is to go with Synovus, and I understand why, because of the interest that would be earned on daily balances, but I'm just not comfortable with them as far as handling the city's financial accounts due to just lack of knowledge on them as far as handling government accounts. If it were a personal account, I would be 100% for it, but I'm just not at a point that I would say that they're better. We have an established relationship with Wells Fargo. I think they've provided us good service, and the switch is going to be a monumental task. It's not like just changing over a personal checking account. The city has a lot of accounts, and there's a lot of things associated with it. So that's my take on it.
Mayor, can I ask Mr. Dobson a question?
Yes.
So that wasn't one of the questions to the banks that put in a proposal for all these? Have they ever done any government banking?
They have done some. I don't know from what I've been able to gather so far, to what extent, whether they've handled comparable size municipalities similar to us. I know that they've handled some smaller ones.
And Mr. Dotson, what's the difference between the two on interest?
Excuse me?
What's the difference on the interest between the two?
Well, when you, I don't have those numbers right here in front of me, but just remember I said it's the interest on the average daily balance, but there's some other considerations that have to be considered.
So is it a substantial difference?
I think it's maybe a couple of percentage points. But again, keep in mind, the city doesn't keep a whole lot of money in their accounts. That money's handled actually through another, I think it's Bank One or, yeah. That's where the majority of our money is. It draws the interest.
So can I ask another question? What is the contract up with our bank? And the reason why we even looked at this with Wells Fargo?
The reason why this came up for discussion is because through our auditor process, they indicated that we may be able to save money by looking at our banker. That's how this ever originated. It was discussed my first year, 2022. So this has been something the auditors have come to tell me we could save money if we look at our banker. So then we started the process.
Mayor, based on what Mr. Dotson stated to us just a moment ago, I'm in favor of giving him an opportunity, the time and opportunity to look at and bring to us something that he really feels comfortable. I mean, he's in this position for us for a reason. And I hate for him to make a suggestion or imply something, and then we forward ahead, and then come back and have to regurgitate.
Thank you, Mr. Dotson. Okay, so when it comes to the banking RFP, yes, the question was asked, can they handle government accounts? And both of them said yes. All of them said yes. When it comes to the last questions that were asked to the top two, I have a little table that I just want to share, and it's not printed, so I can't have it in front of you, but I can tell you, or I can pass the phone so you can read it without saying the company's names. I'll say Bank 1, Bank 2. So if you just make a little note, okay, it's going to be three things. Number one, Bank 1, number one, the earnings credit rate. So the earnings credit rate for Bank 1 is 2.5%. The earnings credit rate for Bank 2 is 1.65%. And they're both based on market conditions. So those rates can fluctuate through the term of the contract. Now, the second one, the second one is dealing with interest rate on excess balances. Okay. For Bank 1, that amount is 2%. For Bank 2, that amount is 5.25%. The amounts for both can adjust with market conditions. Bank 1 states their amount is the interest rate, the 2% interest rate, is a managed rate that can adjust based on market conditions. Bank 2 says that the 5.25 interest rate is tied to the federal funds and is a federal fund rate minus 0.25%, which can fluctuate based on the Fed rate throughout the contract term. So one of them just says a managed rate that can adjust. Managed rate that can adjust. The second says a federal rate that adjusts based on market conditions. Okay. Then the third question for Bank, and this is about if the service fees will remain fixed for the entirety of the contract. For Bank 1, the answer is yes. For Bank 2, the answer is yes. Okay. And they both list their representatives for government accounts that would be assigned to us. So that's the last three issues that everybody wanted the answer to. So now you have the information to compare Bank 1 to Bank 2. There's other things that were stated, meaning the minimum amount that you have to reserve into the account, the monthly fees for the services that they're estimating based on the needs that we've told them, but none of those, I think, are a major concern based on the different panel discussions we've had. So really, it comes to 1, 2, and 3, what we discussed. So again, we've had this out for many months, and as a procurement professional, I don't like that it's sitting vacant and undetermined for so long. We asked for the proposal. We gave an amount of time to keep the bids open, and we have exceeded that each time. We need to make a decision. If that means waiting until April, I'm fine. I won't like it because it's already too long, but we can do it. I do what's best for the government overall. But I did go and do due diligence extra due diligence and spoke to a banker who is a friend, who knew nothing about either of these opportunities. Their bank's not even listed here in Warner Robins, and I got an analysis from them, which gave me comfort in putting Synovus on here. I have nothing to gain or lose except somebody messing it up. A concern would naturally be, can they handle the accounts? Can they adjust our funds over from a current banker to a new banker? That's makes sense. Everything has to make sense. But I just wanted to give you my take on the process and the information which led me to the conclusion that I've made. Mr. Dotson and I work great together, and it's okay if we don't agree the same, but right now we got to make the decision on what's best. We either can award, we either can postpone and put it on the April agenda, because I will not be here next week. I'm fine with that answer too, but that's the absolute last date that we will go without making a decision on a process we started before the holidays. So you all can decide what you want to do, but just know I will not go beyond the April meeting.
Mayor, I would propose that, based on what you said and based on what Mr. Dotson said, that we put this off to the April meeting. At that time, we should have all of the information. If not, we'll go with what you do have. I agree, we can't keep kicking the can down the street. But one thing Mr. Dawson said, and I appreciate him for saying it, was that he was not comfortable. And yet we're asking him and we're depending on him to give us something that we are going to be comfortable with.
And Mayor, I just want to ask, what new information are we looking for?
I think based on Mr. Dotson's comments, if they have the government account experience and they can transfer our accounts properly. Is that right, Mr. Dotson? Yes. So making sure they can handle the load of the city of Warner Robins. A lot of banks that are smaller, we already know they probably can't handle, they don't have the bandwidth to handle our accounts. So that's what he's referring to, which is a valid call out. So we would have to come up with, through the procurement process, another way of determining, them giving us information or a way to assess their ability to actually handle our accounts. But we have to give that ability to both of the companies to come back and give us an answer. And then we can rule off of that.
Was our current bank one of the bankers that were bidding on the process?
That's correct. We have our current banker, and then we have a new. For the top two, we have our current one is on the top two, and then a new bank is a second. So we're still in discussion on the purchasing spreadsheet. So any other comments before we move on to the next item on our agenda, which is item number 4, the newly revised item number 4. Okay, so the suggestion from Councilman Holmes is that we wait until the April 1st meeting to make a determination on our banking partner.
So Mayor, I make a motion to remove this item from the agenda today.
I'll second that.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilman Lawrenson, seconded by Councilman Bibb. Okay, and then we have a point of discussion. So the recommendation was made that that a motion be amended to say that we have the item number, which is the new item number 4, motion for purchasing spreadsheet, be heard on the April 1st meeting. So have it tabled until the April 1st meeting.
So the motion will be amended to say we're going to table this motion to the first meeting in April.
And I'll second that, Mayor.
Motion by Councilman Lawrenson, seconded by Councilman Mack. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please state aye and raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. All right, so now we move on to the revised item number 5, which is an ordinance for SPLOST 18 overage allocation to be discussed by Councilman Holmes, which says 4 on your sheet.
Oh, I was about to say, something happened here, the numbers. Okay, item number 4. I have an ordinance to bring before the mayor and council, whereas ordinance 2-23 noted that excess SPLOST collections could be reallocated. And where the mayor recommends to the governing authority that based on the approved expenditures are beneficial. Now therefore be it hereby ordained by the governing authority of the city of Warner Robins that the reallocation of 2018 SPLOST capital projects be amended to increase the account number, which I'm not going to do that. Finance put that in as reference in this chart. What I am going to do is the figures, the amount of dollar amount. Sidewalks, 500,000, recreation, 500,000, capital improvement, 1 million, other $605,078, totaling $605,078. I move for the adoption. I wish to waive the second reading.
I second that motion.
Motion by Councilman Holmes, waiving the second reading, and seconded by Councilman Curtis. Any discussion? All those in favor, please state aye and raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. On to item number 6 as amended, which would be an ordinance for ARPA allocations to be discussed by Councilman Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whereas Mayor and Council of the City of Warner Robins has identified projects or expenditures which the Mayor and Council deem as permitted use of its proceeds from the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds received from the U.S. Treasury. Therefore, therefore, be it hereby ordained that $7,681,007 be designated and allocated in accordance with the below attached budget worksheet for the purpose of allocating the city's American Rescue Plan Act 2021 Special Revenue Fund. If any ordinance or part of the City of Warner Robins is in conflict herewith, this ordinance shall have preference if any provision of this ordinance are held invalid. Such invalidity shall not affect any other provision which can be given effect without the invalid provision, and to this end the provision of this ordinance are declared serviceable. The provision of this ordinance were first read on March 14, 2024, and shall become effective upon adoption on March 14, 2024. And I would like to waive the second reading.
I second that motion.
Motion by Councilman Curtis, waiving the second reading, seconded by Councilman Holmes. Any discussion? All those in favor, please state aye and raise your hand. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. All right, so now we have reached the end of our agenda. We can open the floor for any citizen comments if there are any. Please make your way to the podium. Please state your name, address. You'll have 3 minutes on the clock. Neither I nor council can respond to you.
My name is Darrell Vining. My address is 613 Bay Laurel Circle, Warner Robins, Georgia. I'd just like to make a comment as a member of clergy in this community. Oftentimes we hear governmental entities make the reference that there are a lot of social services that churches provide, and we need to be aware, if we're in a meeting like this, that the reality, when we look at information that comes from whether it's Pew Research or from the Census Bureau, that less than 15% of the population attend any house of worship in any community. To expect that 100% of the social services provided are by churches is unreasonable and unrealistic, and does not meet the mandate of providing for the common defense, promoting the general welfare and securing the blessings of liberty that the Constitution provides. I challenge us to stop with that mindset. I know that you all are not the only ones responsible, because I've heard it at county level, at state level, and even federally when people say the churches will do the social work, but the churches don't see the people. It's not the church's responsibility to do that. Also, if we have some extra and additional monies available, I would like to make a suggestion that we use that for our seniors over 50 and are disabled to pay whatever fees to use any of our recreation facilities. I didn't hear a discussion about that. We've been waiting to hear back about a research about what our fees schedules are for our Parks and Rec, and if, since we've got extra money, how much are we collecting for people to walk the track? Our seniors and our folks on fixed incomes deserve a break. Amen. And that's what I'm just going to say right there. And one last thing. Thank you all for all the work and hard things that you have to make decisions on. Appreciate your service.
Thank you, Mr. Vining. Any other comments? Going once, going twice. The door is now closed. All right. Now we'll go to council comments, and I'm going to start on this side, Councilman Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say 1.5 in community grants. Y'all enjoy.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Holmes.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Councilman. Thanks, Reverend Vining, for your comments. We hear everything that's been said, and we will certainly try to make amends to those. Thank you, Mayor, for your hard work. And I'll close by saying your shoulders are only so broad. Don't put more than you can carry.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Lashley.
Yeah, I'd like to apologize for my late arrival. I got a little tied up with some customers of mine, but some good work done today. Appreciate the update when I got here from the Godfather. Quick where we were and where we're at. But it's an exciting day. I like that we are actually allocating money that we know we're going to have responsibly and still having a cushion there for what can't be accounted for. So excellent job by everybody up here and the staff. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Lawrenson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm just wanting to say how thankful I am for additional funds that we can use in all these different ways, and also to wish our mayor a safe and a very fruitful adventure. As she'll not be with us next week, but we'll look forward to seeing you again in about 2.5 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Bibb.
Great work, and Mayor, may I be excused?
Yes, sir. We're all about to get excused right with you. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Mack.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Short. Thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion in front of our constituents. This was a very, very good meeting and very good discussion, and we worked it out. And also thank Mr. Dotson and the team in the Finance Department for crunching these numbers together and giving us as much information to make sound decisions on behalf of the citizens. Also, I'd like to echo Mr. Holmes, Mr. Vining, Reverend Vining, Darrell Vining. I hear you, and I agree with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. All right, now it's my turn. Thank you all so much for being here and bearing with us through this discussion. Typically, we do all of these in pre-council, so most of you have been in those meetings before. So this is the first time we did a discussion here at this level, but good thing we did, because we would have went over our time for certain in pre-council if we had it in those doors, but this is important to all of us. All of the things on the agenda today are extremely important. They're all dealing with money. So when you're talking about money and making sure we're good stewards of every single dollar, sometimes it takes lengthy discussions, and sometimes it brings about confusion. But at the end of the day, we do what we do. We come together as a team, we make a decision, and we stick to it. So I'm so thankful to work with a team that challenges me to be my best, including our executive team, our staff, and we challenge each other to be our best. And that's what makes a really, really great team that makes great positive impact in our community. And that's exactly what we are doing as a team. So thank you all for everything. I like the comments about the recreation fees from one of our recreational advisory board members. And I have some ideas up my sleeve that's been lingering. Council and I have talked about these for a while too. But we have some ideas up our string that's been lingering about the recreation department and fees. So the board will be hearing about those as well very soon. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy your weekend. And please come back for our next council meeting, and I'll see you April 1st so we can get back to business. Meeting is adjourned.